TWolves get their revenge versus OKC and move back into first place in the West. I got expert Jack Borman. He's going to help us break it all down. It's all coming up next on the Locked On Wolves POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's up? Back in the lab, back at it. Another TWolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. That's the man, Jack Borman. He's on Twitter, at JRBorman13. And before we get into all the action, Jack, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers, you're getting $200 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. $200 when you bet just $5. Check it all out. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, man. The last time these two teams played in the same building, it turned into a laugher, 129-106 OKC. But tonight, Wolves flipped the script. They got their revenge. They held one of the best offenses in the entire NBA to just 101 points. What a fun game, start to finish. It really felt like an absolute war for 4 straight quarters, man. You could tell just how badly both teams wanted it. And it's funny. You go into halftime with about as even of a box score and team stats as maybe you'll ever see. Nonetheless, Wolves win it. 107-101. They get their swag back a little bit, find their mojo again, take the lead back, more importantly, in the Western Conference. Huge night, huge game. Give us your biggest takeaways. And for a struggling Wolves team coming into this one, what's a win like this do for this team's confidence and psyche, man?
Yeah, I think it's got to do a lot, considering that if they lost this game, they could have ended up in the 4 spot in the West. But instead, they're back atop the West now, which I think may not seem like a lot, or may not seem like it matters all that much on just one night in January here at the end of January. But I'm sure that has to matter for the psyche and the confidence of this team. And we talked about it the other night, that confidence was just a huge thing. And we saw a much more confident Timberwolves team in the fourth quarter. And, I think Chris Finch deserves some credit for some of the lineups that he trotted out there tonight, and especially right away in the fourth quarter. Jaden McDaniels, we haven't seen Jaden McDaniels play at the start of the second or fourth quarters at all really this season. He's pretty much been a guy that's played the entire first quarter, the entire third quarter, and then kind of come back in with Anthony Edwards in the second half of the second and fourth quarters. But tonight he started both the second and the fourth quarter, which was something new. And I think adding that to having Jordan McLaughlin in there is another it's kind of another pace setter, table setter at the start of the fourth quarter, along with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. It's pretty rare that both of those guys start the fourth quarter together. They did that tonight alongside Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So that 5-man unit in the fourth quarter was just excellent right away off the rip. And for those guys to go +9 in the first 2 minutes and 50 seconds of the fourth quarter, after I think going -9 in the first 2 minutes of the fourth quarter the other night, obviously a little bit of a different lineup, but that was huge. Jordan McLaughlin hit a monster 3, wide open 3. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, hit a big corner 3. And then Karl Anthony Towns hit a big 3. So right after Oklahoma City makes 3 huge threes at the end of the third quarter, the Timberwolves turn right around, hit 3 big ones at the start of the fourth quarter, to kind of even that out a little bit and retake a lead. And with Jordan McLaughlin in there at the start of the fourth quarter, the ball was just moving, right? Like the offense was being initiated in different ways, which is something we talked about the other night. Different guys were handling the ball. Guys were moving without the basketball. We were seeing some off-ball screens being set by Rudy Gobert to get Karl Anthony Towns and Jaden McDaniels the ball in that fourth quarter, which was huge. And then what I really appreciated about this fourth quarter was, if you look at a box score in the fourth quarter, or even this, if I would have told you that Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards scored a combined 12 points in the fourth quarter and the Timberwolves were down going into the fourth quarter, what would you say? You'd probably say that the Timberwolves would lose that fourth quarter, right?
Right.
But that was the exact opposite tonight, right? They scored 34 points in the fourth quarter. Only 12 of them came from their 2 stars. Jaden McDaniels, 5 points. Had that huge 3 to go up 2 with 2:32 to go, and then a tip in to go up 6 with 45 seconds left. Nickeil Alexander-Walker had 7, I believe tied Anthony Edwards for the lead in the fourth quarter scoring. Had a huge go-ahead mid-range shot, which was big time. And then Jordan McLaughlin had another awesome, kind of rainbow floater over Chet that was at a pretty monster point in the game. And then you had that Naz Reid 3 that was pretty huge off of an Anthony Edwards assist where he drew the defense in at the middle of the floor and kicked out to Naz. So I think, the way that so many different guys were involved in the offense in that fourth quarter, touching the ball, moving without the ball, and the fact that both Ant and Carl got off of the ball early in the fourth quarter really allowed the ball to just flow, everybody to kind of find a rhythm, feel like they were a part of the action, which I thought was really important. And then on the other side of the ball in that fourth quarter, Jalen Williams has been the leading scorer for the Thunder so far this season in the fourth quarter. And the Wolves did an excellent job on him. He was just 1 of 5 for 3 points in that quarter. And the defense overall as a whole was excellent in that fourth quarter, holding Oklahoma City to just 24 points on 8 of 19 shooting, which was pretty huge for a half court offense that's been among the league's best so far this season. So for them to be able to do that with some pretty interesting defensive adjustments that we'll talk about, that Chris Finch and his staff deserve an overwhelming amount of credit for. But just to see these Timberwolves, come from behind, I think that was only the 3rd loss all season that Oklahoma City has had when they're leading going into the fourth quarter. So for that to be the case, just you have to be really excited about what you saw from the Timberwolves and hope that they've, at least been able to exercise some of these demons now that, they were able to find a win on the road, big fourth quarter without their starting point guard, who they may not have now for a little bit, especially if they're waiting for Conley to get back to 100% with that bum hammy.
Yeah, so many layers I'd love to get into from this one. Such an incredible game, but you called it an absolute war. It certainly felt like it. What more can you say about this defense, man, specifically, and what they just did to one of the best offenses in the league? What stuck out the most? And I guess where I'm going with this is, can you go a little bit more in depth as far as Finch's defensive game plan? Because putting Jaden on Chet turned out to be a really great move and paid huge dividends in the end, didn't it?
100%. And those two guys are pretty similar build, right? Like, I actually think Jaden McDaniels might weigh more than Chet Holmgren, and Chet Holmgren is maybe an inch taller than Jaden McDaniels. So as much as people think that might be like a super out of left field idea, it may seem that way on the surface, but those guys are actually pretty similarly built. But yeah, so it started out there, right? Where Chris Finch, it started last year in the playoffs, where they had Rudy Gobert, instead of taking an opposing center, kind of took, another player in the starting lineup that wasn't a very good 3-point shooter for the Nuggets, and Aaron Gordon, to kind of keep Rudy Gobert around the rim and deter a lot of, Nuggets drivers from the rim and make just kind of clog the paint and ruin the spacing that the Nuggets had. And it worked out pretty well, putting Karl Anthony Towns on a burlier, bigger Jokic at the 5. And they kind of carried the same idea here, right? So Josh Giddey coming into this game, 0 of 13 from 3 over the last 6. Thank you, Jeff, for that. I know that Michael Grady belabored that point on the broadcast, but it worked out really well, right? Josh Giddey, I think, was 3 of 3 to start out in the first quarter, shooting threes, and I think he was 2 of 8 for the rest of the game, or 2 of 7 for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and one of those threes, how lucky was that, man? Just barely got over the rim.
Right.
Looked like it was going to be short.
And
but
so, yeah, I was glad that the Timberwolves didn't abandon that game plan, right? And so, given that Oklahoma City, right, Chet Holmgren is their 5, they don't really have a bigger, burlier 4, right? So they put Karl Anthony Towns on Lou Dort, another guy who, to Lou Dort's credit, he's been shooting the 3 pretty well in the high 30s this year, but that's not what he's been his whole career, and his shot mechanics haven't changed this year. So they again dared Lou Dort to shoot it, and Karl Anthony Towns didn't really try to run him off the line. And that just totally tanked the spacing for the Thunder. The Thunder just weren't able to get to the rim as cleanly tonight as they had been in some of the previous meetings. And someone said, right, Chet Holmgren in this game, only 4 points on 2 of 9 field goals. He had as many assists as he had turnovers. Dort was 0 of 7. So Karl Anthony Towns deserves his credit there. And then, I really liked the fact that they mixed up who they put on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Jaden McDaniels saw some time on him, but for the majority of the game, it was Nickeil Alexander-Walker, his cousin, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander Walker. Oh my goodness, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's cousin, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, that was guarding him for the majority of this game. And then when Now was off the floor, it was Anthony Edwards who was taking that challenge. And we saw Ant, you never see Ant asked to come out of the game because he's gassed, but he has to come out of the game because he was gassed I think it was, right near the end of that third quarter, because he was doing such an excellent job of, at least making Shai work, right? And you want to make these guys work for everything, especially on the second night of a back-to-back for them. And that really showed up, I thought, in the fourth quarter. I thought that the Thunder had a really tough time staying with the Wolves off the dribble in the fourth quarter, and they had an extra difficult time trying to beat guys off the dribble in the half court offensively, just with having played yesterday on the road in Detroit, and then having to come back tonight. But again, for the Timberwolves to hold the Thunder to shoot 17 of 34 in the paint by clogging all that spacing and just having a lot of bodies around to contest shots at the rim, especially with Gobert just being parked there in the paint, was incredible. And all of that resulted in the Timberwolves allowing just 81 points in the final 41 minutes and 29 seconds of this game, or 41-31 of this game. I mean, to think that the Thunder scored 20 points in the first 6.5 minutes of this game. You and the Wolves were right there with them. I think at 17 or 18, you were thinking this game might be a shootout, right? Mm-hmm. And then for the Timberwolves to just clamp down the way they did, allowing 81 points the final 41.5 minutes. That's championship level defense, right? Against one of the team's best half court offenses. And obviously, you can say what you want about the Thunder, how young they are, they're inexperienced, yada, yada, whatever. But I mean, the numbers at this point don't lie. Like, I feel pretty good that Oklahoma City's got a good half court offense for the most part. They have really good spacing. Even with their non-shooters, do a good job of kind of activating those guys out of the corners to help the spacing for everyone else. And they're extremely well coached. So for the Timberwolves to have a stretch like that of prolonged defensive excellence on the road, in a game with, pretty big stakes considering what was on the line here for the, to tie the season series at 2, get revenge for that last game in Minnesota that they pissed away, was pretty huge. So you just got to clap it up and give some snaps for the Timberwolves defense and Chris Finch and his staff for kind of going outside the box on some of the matchups to help gain an advantage here.
Yeah, well said. And I know you texted me at halftime about just how impressed you were with Ant and Cat early on, first half kind of thing. And as good as they were, Ant especially, I got to tell you, man, you already mentioned a few of them. Jaden McDaniels, McLaughlin, Naz Reid, even TBJ in the mix for Shake tonight a little bit. They all earned some flowers too. So I know Ant's going to be, the game MVP, so to speak, the biggest X factor. But what was your favorite performance from all the role guys who stepped up huge tonight? Because there was a lot of great options tonight. Total team effort and team performance that got them the dub.
I don't necessarily know if you can call Rudy Gobert a role guy.
I get it.
But for him to have 17 rebounds and make all 6 of his shots, and just make life really, really difficult for every single Oklahoma City player that got into the paint, is special, man. And for him to be so willing to not touch the ball as much as he does and do all the dirty work night in and night out for a number one defense is just a joy to watch, man. And then you see a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker step into the starting lineup and leave everything out there on the floor. And in the fourth quarter, I don't know what it is about Nickeil, but in the fourth quarter, he just makes every single little play that that a coach would want any of his players to make, whether it's, making the right defensive rotation, helping get a long defensive rebound that's a 50-50 ball, poking the ball away, diving on the ground, taking a charge, making a corner 3, making the extra pass, all these little things he does perfectly. But I think if I had to give kind of a runner-up for role performance, we've already talked about Jordan McLaughlin, which was obviously huge, but I thought Jaden McDaniels, man, he's really had some struggles at different points, especially in the second half of games. We've talked a lot about how he's had some really good starts and really good first halves of games, but he hasn't really been a whole lot of a factor for the Timberwolves in the fourth quarter this season. But for him to make that ginormous corner 3 that I think totally turned the tide of the game, I think put him up 2, and I don't think they surrendered the lead after that with 2 minutes and 32 seconds left. And then for him to get active on the offensive glass, which is not something we've seen much from him this season, but for him to find a great opportunity to corner crash and somehow, by the grace of God, get that ball in the basket with 45 seconds left to give them a 6-point lead. I think when you just think about the magnitude of those two plays on it's bearing on the final score, I think that you have to really tip your cap to Jaden, especially after sitting for 4 or 5 minutes in that fourth quarter, after picking up his 5th foul, the way that he was able to come right back in the game, stay engaged while he's on the bench, and really be aggressive in the right ways, and being ready when his number was called offensively was really, really cool to see tonight, and something that hopefully we'll be able to continue, because there'll be more opportunities for him if the Timberwolves continue to move the ball, move without the basketball like they did tonight, and make the extra pass, because he's going to be waiting there in the corner, whether it's to take a corner three or to pump and drive and finish at the rim. I think that he's going to have some opportunity here, so long as the Timberwolves can make this type of play offensively in the fourth quarter become more of the norm than what we've seen in the past, with a lot of ball watching off the ball and just dancing and not really getting off the ball early and making the Timberwolves really easy to guard. So now they kind of have a fork in the road, and it'll be interesting to see which direction the Timberwolves go here after, what may very well may be their best win of the season so far.
Well said. All right, plenty more deep dive from this one, including more on Anthony Edwards' huge impact tonight. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers, you're getting $200 in bonus bets when you place any $5 wager. That's $200 in bonus bets when you throw down just $5 on any bet. You will not find a better promo than this one all year, and you don't even have to win. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time to get in on all the action. The app, so easy to use, and they got everything you need. Money lines, parlays, prop bets, over-unders, you name it, they got it. FanDuel's got everything you need to bet on the entire NBA season, and it's by far the easiest and simplest betting app to use. Go check it out for yourself. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon today. America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA.
Can I just share two quick things that I saw on Twitter here during the break?
Absolutely.
From my guy Andrew Carlson over at Canis tonight. The Wolves are 20-5 when Jaden McDaniels shoots 50% or better from the floor. And this one was from John Krasinski via everybody's favorite Marnie Gellner. Oklahoma City was 28-1 coming into the game when leading going into the fourth quarter. They are now 28-2. The other loss was at Minnesota on November 28th.
Stop it. Come on.
So those are the two stats of the night right there.
I'll tell you what, for all the recent struggles, the last week or two specifically, man, it just feels like, Wolves fans in the state of Minnesota can sleep easy tonight and just kind of, I don't know, get that monkey off their back, man. Such a huge relief knowing that we can still step up and show up during the biggest games when they need it. So absolutely just an outstanding night for Wolves fan nation. Can you explain to me, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but can you explain to me, like I'm 5, why Anthony Edwards doesn't get the most normal, basic, obvious, vanilla foul calls? Like, I just don't get it, man. I mean, you know a lot more about the NBA. You've been watching a lot more than I have. Monster dunk with 2 minutes left. SGA all over him, holding on to his arm. Guy swallows the whistle. And if that's how you're calling it that night, that's fine. But when SGA gets the same exact call night in, night out, you can't blame Ant for being so frustrated out there. Is it a ref thing? Is it a league thing? Is it like just personal to Anthony Edwards for some reason? Even though I don't know why that would even make any sense. I'm just flinging things out because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around it. And I know a lot of fans are too.
Yeah, I think my only real explanation there is that Anthony Edwards is so strong and never flops. Ant does not flop. If he's falling on the ground or he's having to totally contort his body or change what's happening, chances are it's because he's being contacted, right? And with a player like SGA, I'm not going to sit here and say that he flops all the time, but he just doesn't use his strength all the time in the same way that Ant does, where I think when he gets hit, even marginal stuff, he just falls over.
Right.
And he has a Harden-esque ability to, I don't want to necessarily say trick the refs, but
a little aloof there, though.
But to embellish the contact in such a way that makes everything look like an obvious foul. And it's truly a skill. And I think that rather than dogging on SGA for something like that, I mean, it's more just on the NBA to try to eradicate some of this stuff. I'm not going to take anything away from SGA. I think he's an awesome player and is generally about the right things. He doesn't really complain to the refs like Embiid does after he flops all over the place constantly. I just think for Ant, it's mostly about how strong he is and that he doesn't flop, he doesn't embellish contact, and yeah. So I saw apparently on Twitter, Anthony Edwards willingly ate a fine in his post-game press conference or post-game hit there with Leah B. Olson on Bally. I didn't listen to any of the audio, but apparently he went in on the referees, and he's got every right to be frustrated, man. I mean, SGA 16 free throws. Obviously you got fouled on, half those, a little more than half those. But if Anthony Edwards, instead of having 4 free throws tonight, had probably the 10, 11, 12 that he should have had, you're looking at Ant having 33 or 34 points, and Ant had 27 instead tonight. SGA had 37. And that's really the difference between SGA being, one of the 2 or 3 leading scorers in the NBA and Anthony Edwards being in this kind of second class scorers of guys that are in that 25, 26, 27 points per game scoring range. So, we'll see if that continues to change. I don't think it has anything to do with the way that Ant reacts to foul calls, because if you look at the way Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid and Jason Tatum just constantly whine and complain and scream and cry at all these refs every single time up the floor that they don't get a foul, pretty much every single time they miss a shot or turn it over, they're begging for a foul call. And Ant's just not like that. I mean, obviously he'll clap at refs, he'll get mad, but I think more often than not, Ant has a point when he's frustrated. So I think all that is kind of what it is at this point. I think it's mainly just that he's so strong. Is the best answer I can give you.
What's your impression? I know we kind of cherry pick some of these other role guys, but what's your impression and evaluation of Nas since he's been here, and how much has he grown from last year to now in this role? Because his off-ball defense continues to stick out for me in a good way, and I think more and more he gets real playing time with Conley out now, the more he's just going to be able to develop and grow into just an even better overall player and be that next lead guard in the lineup consistently for long stretches if needed. But give me your snapshot, just kind of scouting report on him, because if he can develop these raw skills that he's got, that's a huge plus for this team, isn't it?
It totally is. I mean, and the thing for Nikhil is, he was kind of in that awkward stage where by the time it was about, he developed his game as a rookie and as a second-year player, and that he was getting ready to kind of try to make his mark, play more minutes. He got traded to Utah, and then even in Utah in a rebuilding situation, he didn't play a whole lot. And so for him to be able to really kind of grow into this role and just play extremely hard in a smaller role last season after he was acquired. And I don't necessarily want to call it garbage time, because that's not necessarily what it was, with different guys in and out of the lineup. He just made it really hard for coaches not to play him. And then as the Timberwolves started to have injuries, he was just really ready and capitalized his opportunity by just playing really hard and doing all the little things the right way. And then obviously in the playoffs had a much more elevated role and was asked to do more offensively, and still played within himself really well and was a double-digit scorer on really good efficiency, in addition to incredible on-ball defense on Jamal Murray. And so for him this season, I think it was all about just carrying over that confidence, right? It was the same coaching staff, pretty much the same rotation for the most part. He knew all these guys. He knew exactly how he fit in around all those guys, what was going to be asked of him. And he hadn't really had that for the last, 2-3 years of his career, which are pretty foundational, seasons in your NBA career when you're still on your rookie contract. And so for him to really hit the ground running in a new situation where he's asked to do more. It's more high leverage, right? With the Timberwolves being a playoff caliber team and then playing in the playoffs. I think this season was probably just easy for him, right? I think it's a similar situation for any of us, right? If we've kind of bounced around a few jobs and we don't really know how we feel about ourselves as professionals, what's going to be asked of us every day, what our job's going to look like day in, day out. And then you kind of find a job that you really like, you really enjoy, people around you make sense, you feel like you're valued, you feel like the work that you're doing matters and that it fits in well with the mission and what's going on with the company. And then you can do that for 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, 12 months. Like, you're just going to feel better and more confident about what you're doing and make more of an impact. And I think for Nickeil, that's exactly what it is, right? And whether he's playing on the ball, off the ball, he's just got such good communication, such good instincts, timing, uses his length really effectively. His agility and the way he fights over screens is incredible. I mean, Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker might be two of the best 5 guys in the entire league at navigating screens. And for the Timberwolves to have, both of them and be able to kind of interchange how they want to play those two. And the fact that those two guys are equally good off the ball as they are on the ball, it's an incredible luxury to have. And, and the fact that the Timberwolves have other good defenders around them, I think allows those two to be more opportunistic and pick their spots about when they want to be aggressive and try to jump a passing lane or make a play, away from the ball that I think can really jumpstart this team, get them out in transition, help get some easy buckets, which, with the Timberwolves offense being what it is this year, that's certainly always going to be welcome. So it's been really fun to see him kind of hit his stride and find his, kind of find his niche here and being the man in the fourth quarter, which has been really fun to watch the last few weeks.
All right, quick look at the schedule on deck, and that's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode of Locked On Wolves Postcast is brought to you by Quiz. Quiz is a next-generation trivia experience. It's also the world's first platform where you can earn money playing knowledge games. And for Locked On Wolves fans, they've created an NBA quiz game where you can test your knowledge and win real cash. Play with friends or other fans and let your knowledge shine all the way to the bank. And you can play without downloading anything. Just go to app.quiz.com and start playing today. NBA Quiz is the ultimate knowledge challenge for fans that live and breathe basketball, and I've personally had so much fun playing it. Just go to app.quiz.com to test your knowledge and win cash today. That's Quiz with 3 I's, just like a three-pointer. Play now, showcase your skills, and take home cash prizes. App.quiz.com, where fans become champions. Can I get a quick 60 seconds on this OKC team, man? I know we've done some game previews, and this is the 4th matchup now, but how different is this OKC team versus the OKC team we saw in the first 3 matchup earlier this year, in your opinion? And I guess, what have you just learned the most in these 4 games now? Like a little bit bigger sample size to chew on. Where are the Wolves' biggest mismatches? And what are OKC's biggest weaknesses they need to try and expose more? Because there's definitely a world now where these two teams meet again in the playoffs. And that might be, man, just on paper as of now, after watching what we just watched, that might be one of the best matchups come May and June.
Yeah, I think, if you want to look at mismatches, the first one is pretty obvious, pretty glaring. Oklahoma City is 29th in both offensive rebounding percentage and defensive rebounding percentage. And so that's why it was so frustrating in the second and third quarter when Oklahoma City was getting all these offensive rebounds. Oklahoma City had 8 offensive rebounds for 11 second chance points, and all 11 of those second chance points kind of came at big points when Oklahoma City was going on a run. And so for the Wolves to come back and have 9 offensive rebounds for 15 second chance points by themselves, and then ultimately win on the glass 45-38 was really important. And the Timberwolves have to do a much better job, I think, in my opinion, moving forward if they were to play them in a playoff series of capitalizing on how big they are. I mean, Chet Holmgren obviously is an excellent rim protector, but he is rail thin. And the fact that Rudy Gobert is not really posting up many guys and really having his way on the block with guys, but he does with Chet Holmgren, like you saw in that dunk in the fourth quarter. They don't really have a backup center either that provides any type of a presence. So the Timberwolves have to do a better job of taking advantage there. And then I think another place that they really have an advantage is offensively. They have a bunch, or defensively, they have a bunch of different guys that you can throw at SGA to try to make his life difficult, right? And I think that that the Thunder have two guys in their starting lineups that I think most defenses do not really respect in terms of their jump shooting ability, and Lou Dort and Josh Giddey. And so if the Timberwolves are able to play off those guys, kind of make SGA and Jalen Williams play in a crowd and force those guys to make tough 3-point shots. They shot 6 of 10 tonight collectively from three, those two players, but I think they do much more of their damage on the drive, especially getting into the paint. I think they did a great job of, for the most part, keeping those guys out of the paint and forcing them to make tough shots. And so that's going to be an area where the Timberwolves need to do better if they play them again in the playoffs. And then on the other side of things for Oklahoma City is a phenomenal team in terms of turning opponents over in the half court and then turning those turnovers into points on the other end of the floor. They do a great job of running in transition. And so that's an area that the Timberwolves have actually been pretty good in this season in terms of their transition defense. That's arguably been, the thing they've turned around the most this season compared to last season. If you want to nitpick at a specific area of defense. The fact that Oklahoma City tonight, 7 fast break points, the Wolves also had 7 fast break points. Minnesota did a great job of kind of mitigating that. And again, Oklahoma City had 14 points off of 13 Wolves turnovers, but the fact that the Wolves were able to take 11 off of 12 Oklahoma City turnovers, you got to feel pretty good about, just being -3 in that matchup. So I think that it's really kind of an interesting game of strength on weakness, right? Where these two teams, really are kind of opposites in some capacities. But then again, if you think about it this way, right? Like Minnesota has a correctable problem in terms of turnovers, right? You'd think that with the personnel they have, they'd be able to figure some of that out. But Oklahoma City, they don't have the infrastructure to just be bigger, right? They have to go make a trade and give something up and start to dip into this massive war chest that they have of assets to go improve their team. And so I don't know that Sam Presti will. I think he's constantly, has the longest view in the room. From some people I've talked to that cover the Thunder. So we'll see if they end up doing that or not. But I really like the Wolves' chances in a playoff series just because I think they have a lot more offensive talent. And, the Wolves did lose 25-21 in terms of bench scoring tonight, but the Thunder don't really have any bench players that offer them really consistent scoring off the bench. And so it'll be really interesting to see how these two teams try to, address some of their weaknesses at the trade deadline, because there are clear opportunities for them to do so. It's just going to be a matter of whether both sides feel that, it's going to be worth whatever they have to give up to go and do it.
All right, last one real quick. We got to get out of here. 60 seconds schedule coming up. Finally back at home for 3 straight. Mavs, Magic, Rockets, then Bulls, Bucks, Clippers, all on the road. Obviously, this OKC game was the one everyone had circled on the schedule for quite a while now. But when you see the next week or so coming up, what's something that sticks out the most, or, which matchup or game are you most intrigued or excited about?
I think for me, it's got to be Luka, right? Just with the way he's playing, obviously scored 73 points the other night. Has just been on a historic tear. They have Kyrie Irving back in the lineup now. Kyrie got hurt right after I think the Timberwolves played them down in Dallas. And so he's back, and that'll be really fun, just as another test of this Wolves perimeter defense versus two of the best perimeter scorers in the history of basketball. Is always a super fun treat. Another team that the Wolves are going to be able to try to punish inside and make up for what I thought was a rather disappointing loss last time they played in Dallas. So that'll be a fun matchup on Target Center off the heels of this win, kind of riding high on Wednesday night.
Well said. Well done tonight. As always, Wolves maybe lose the battle. They win the war, though. They take down the Thunder on the road, steal first place back in the Western Conference, led by Ants, 27 points tonight. Back at home Wednesday versus the Mavs. Tip off for that one, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. As always, huge shout out to everyone that joined us in the postcast tonight. Always love the feedback, the comments after every game. And rest assured, we're going to be back each and every game, same time, same place right here to break it all down. Remember, you got to go check out all of Jack's work on Twitter at JRBorman13. And make sure you check him out on the Minnesota basketball party each and every Wednesday with the full crew. Sam Ekstrom, Gophers legend Ron Johnson, Carol Evans, Reggie Wilson, and if you haven't already, Ben Beacon, ripping it up over on the Locked On Wolves podcast each and every day as well. That'll do it for us tonight. He's Jack Borman. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter, @Luke_Spinman. Until next time, signing out.